You know, we all do it. Before we go to a restaurant, before we buy a product, we check the reviews. We look at those little gold stars. But have you ever stopped to think about what they're really worth? Not just as a feeling, but in actual dollars and cents? Well, today, we're going to get into the real numbers behind the power of online reviews. And trust me, it's pretty surprising.
So let's just imagine for a second. You're looking for a new pizza place. You pull up an app and you see two options. One has 3.5 stars, the other has 4.5. You're probably leaning towards the 4.5, right? But what's that one-star difference actually worth to the business owner in cold, hard cash? It's not just a random question. It turns out there's a very specific answer.
And that answer is a pretty big deal. We're talking about what I like to call the 5 to 9% revenue rule. And this comes from a landmark study that actually put a price tag on a single star. For a business, getting that extra star can mean a 5 to 9% jump in revenue. That is huge.
So where does this number even come from? Well, it's not just a guess. It comes from a really clever study out of Harvard Business School. A researcher named Michael Luca wanted to figure out if good reviews cause a business to do better, or if good businesses just naturally get good reviews. It's a classic chicken and egg problem, and he found a brilliant way to solve it.
So how in the world do you prove that the rating itself is making the difference? Well, the researchers found a perfect little natural experiment hiding in plain sight, right inside Yelp's own system. It all has to do with a tiny quirk in how Yelp does its math, and more importantly, how it shows us the results.
Okay, so here is the genius part. It's all about rounding. On Yelp, a restaurant with an average score of, say, 3.24 stars, well, that just shows up to you and me as 3 stars. But if their score is just 1/100th of a point higher, just 3.25, Yelp's system rounds it up, and suddenly it displays as 3.5 stars. And this is why the study is so brilliant. Let's be real, the actual quality difference between a restaurant at 3.24 stars and one at 3.25 is, well, it's basically zero. They're pretty much identical. But for us, the customer, the visual difference between 3 stars and 3.5 stars is massive. It creates this perfect test group where the only real difference is the rating we see. Don't just take my word for it. The author himself, Michael Luca, explained it perfectly. He said he could compare these restaurants with almost identical quality, but because of that round-in rule, there was this huge half-star gap in what customers were actually being shown. It was the perfect natural experiment. So, the big reveal. What happened when they compared the restaurants just above that rounding cutoff to the ones just below? They found that a 1-star improvement on Yelp directly causes a 5 to 9% increase in revenue. Let that sink in for a second. The stars aren't just a scorecard. They're literally driving business. But it gets even more interesting because that powerful 5 to 9% boost, well, it doesn't apply to everyone equally. So the next big question is, who benefits the most from this? I mean, think about it. Does a massive nationwide chain get the same lift from an extra half star on Yelp as, say, the local family-run spot that just opened down the street? The researchers wanted to know that exact thing. And the answer was a resounding no. As you can see here, that entire 5 to 9% revenue bump, it was driven almost exclusively by independent restaurants. For the big chains, a better Yelp rating had basically no significant effect on their revenue at all. In a way, online reviews are really a tool for the little guy. They're a great equalizer. So why? Why does it affect this small guy so much more? Well, the idea is that online reviews are basically a modern substitute for old-school reputation. A big chain already has a huge brand, you know what you're getting, their reputation is built in. But for an independent restaurant, Yelp or Google or any review site, that is their reputation. It gives them the signal of trust that they need to compete. Of course, whenever something becomes this valuable, literally worth up to 9% of your revenue, the temptation to cheat becomes, well, huge. And that brings us to the dark side of this whole ecosystem: fake reviews. And we're not just talking about someone's cousin leaving them a nice comment. We're talking about a whole industry built on deception. It's about systematically faking star ratings and writing completely fabricated reviews, all to trick you into buying something that might not be very good at all. So just how well does this deception work? Check out these numbers from another study. When a low-quality product had real reviews, About 46% of people chose it. Okay, but when they just faked the star rating to be higher, that number shot up to 58%. Then, when they added fake written reviews to go along with the fake stars, it climbed all the way to 62%. It's incredibly effective.
And to put an even sharper point on it, that same study found that a 1-star increase coming from fake reviews can boost demand for a low-quality product by a jaw-dropping 38%. It's a powerful and, honestly, a pretty scary tool.
All right, so we know reviews are incredibly powerful, and we also know that the system can be gamed. So what are we supposed to do? How do we navigate this? Well, the good news is the research gives us some pretty clear clues on how to be a smarter consumer.
So, here are a few things to keep in mind. First, look at the number of reviews. A 4.5-star rating from 2,000 people is way more reliable than the same rating from 10 people. A bigger sample size is just harder to fake. Second, on sites like Yelp, check for things like elite reviewer status. The study actually found these reviews have nearly double the impact, probably because we instinctively trust them more. The bottom line is to look for ratings that have more information and more data behind them. And always remember that both the stars and the text can be used to manipulate you.
So what's the big takeaway here? We've seen that those little stars have real economic power. That 5 to 9% rule is no joke. We've seen that they're a massive tool for underdogs, leveling the playing field for independent businesses. But we've also seen the dark side, how fake reviews can boost demand for bad products by nearly 40%. So the next time you're about to make a choice based on a star rating, just pause for a second and ask yourself, is what I'm seeing real or is it just part of the game?